We are live on Facebook on Everybody Educates page. And, I was even thinking about going live on my regular page too, but I'll share this video out. How's everybody doing? And if you were catching this on the replay, put hashtag replay and then let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know if you are an educator. And then if you tuned in last time, we were talking with this amazing financial consultant and author and Orlando. And so if you missed it last time, I need you all to go back and listen to it again, because he really dropped some really good things that we need to be thinking about as educators. But I'm stuck sometimes in two different spaces. I want to talk to like the people who are in school, but who are in the school system and things that they don't know. One of the things that Everybody Educate does is really help make sure that educators, while they're in the school system, are well informed about everything that's going on so that they can have more peace of mind. So let's start there, okay? But I believe our audience last time were people who actually were transitioning out. And so we have two spaces to go, and we want to make sure that let's start Orlando with the people who are in the school system and what they need to be thinking about right now as educators in the system.
Sure, gotcha. So again, thanks for having me on your show. It's the second one, so definitely excited, to kind of keep this empowerment series, transitional series going. As far as being an educator or a staff member in a school, so you have two different retirement plans that you're eligible for. Typically, you have your pension plan under the state, or if you're in a charter school, you may have your pension plan, or you may have some other alternative to the pension plan. So let's just kind of keep, I guess, with generally what people have, or majority of the pension. So depending on what year you started, you're putting in a certain percentage of each pay to the pension. So if you started, before 2011, you're putting in maybe 7.5% or 6.5%, or maybe 5.25% to your pension, which is mandatory. It does earn interest. Your state and the school district put money in for you as well. So that amount is set. You can't change the amount that you're putting into the pension. Only PSERS, the state may be able to change what's being put in to your account, or dictate what you can put into your account. So if you're under the state pension plan, the one I just mentioned, it's called a defined benefit. So basically, you are guaranteed to get a certain amount of money for the rest of your life. It's based on the formula, similar like to an annuity. That's going to continue to pay you like Social Security. There's different options that you can take when you are retiring, and you have to request an estimate from the state to determine what that amount's going to be. But like I said, that amount is set. Depending on what year you started would determine how much you're going to get, as well as when you can retire without penalty. So a lot of times people ask me if they should retire, when they can retire. So first thing I tell them is that you can retire whenever you want. It's just a matter of how much you're going to get, and if you can afford to do it, because you can retire tomorrow if you can afford to do it, no matter what you want to get. Secondly, it as a matter of maybe a penalty that you're going to receive, right? If you do leave early. So that's something to consider, because a lot of times people, think that, they can be 55 or 59 or 45 or 50 or whatever age it is. But once you request an estimate from the state will actually show you on a particular page what your normal retirement date is. So again, that's why you're working. So I'm going to, I guess, kind of go back a little bit, because I think I'm starting to transition to people that are already transitioning or transitioning.
Well, I do. Well, let me say this, because I felt like it was really important to have that understanding while I was in the school system. And I don't think I did. I did not understand it. And I really wish I would have talked to you sooner. And who can people talk to while they're in the school system about some of these things now, so that they can really start to, like we talked about last week, make some good moves and decisions? Who should teachers talk to now?
Yeah, so I would say the one person you can talk to is me.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah. So you could, yeah, you can definitely always call myself. You know, I'm a retirement planning specialist. I'm very well versed in you know, the pension, you know, state retirement, how it works. You can
Mhm.
also call a state your state representative as far as like for your pension plan. So there's a number, a 1-800 number for the state for pieces that you can actually call, and they'll walk you through, you know, like your different options. They won't give you any financial advice as to what option you should pick because they're not financial consultants. They're going to tell you speak with a financial professional. They're just going to give you generic, you know, of basically here's what you're going to get here, so when you can retire, and just pretty much straightforward questions, straightforward answers to your questions.
Okay. Does everybody, like every state, because I know we have different listeners on our show, and does everybody have PZERs in their state, or are there different names for what, you know?
Yep. Yeah, so there's different names. So yeah, every state. So if you're in Ohio, you have an Ohio State retirement system. If you're in Florida, Florida retirement system. Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, you know, retirement system. So you
Okay.
should receive letters in the mail with your statement.
Mhm.
Or I know a lot of times they're going to put that information online now, and you can go online and you can look up your statement, look up the information to determine, you know, who to call from the state, and also when you can retire without penalty or take a pension without penalty.
See, that's why I think it's so important to know. Like, I wish I would have known that. And it's not that I didn't know it. I don't think I paid attention to it. So I wanted to bring some awareness to the fact that, like, okay, I'm sitting down with Orlando and I'm like, wait, what is this again? Wait, what? I've been in the system, the school system for what, 16, 17 years. And so I felt like, dang, I needed to keep track of that a little bit better. So that I really could make some good moves and be prepared for like if I get sick, if I you know, something happens with family and all that. And sometimes as educators, we just work ourselves, and we don't think about these things, and years go by and we're like, wait, what do I have? And I actually didn't know what you know, I just like to keep it real. I didn't really know one of my accountability partners, Ed Consulting Accountability Partner, said to me, are you vested? And I said, I don't know. And I was like, and I was seriously it was an important question for, you know, before I transitioned. I was just like, I really don't know. And so keeping track of that earlier, you actually can just plan better. And I'm in, like, October is the month of order for me and planning. And so as you, as an educator, even if you're a new educator, put your plan down for, like, down on paper and say, I know I have these benefits. And so talk to us a little bit about vested and what that means.
Yep. Yeah, so definitely good point. So vested basically means that you're eligible, as far as the retirement system goes, you're
Okay.
eligible to receive a monthly pension check. So the
Mm.
state and school district will put money in for you. You put money in yourself. They put in more than what you're putting in. So whenever you go to take a pension, if you are invested, then you'll get a monthly pension check because you're eligible for that amount of money. If
Okay.
not, you're not vested. So it's very important for you to know when you're vested, and then also ultimately how much you're going to get. But definitely the vesting part, because to your point, Robin, that if you do decide like, hey, I want to leave, and I've been here for, say I started working, you know, in 2015, and I want to leave now, and I'm want to start receiving a pension payment, you're more than likely not going to get a monthly pension check. You may be able to, you'll be able to get your contributions and the interest that it earned, but you're not going to get a monthly pension check from the
Mm.
state. So that's important to know as well, just being vested. And like I said, on your pension statement, it will show your normal retirement date, but vesting is important.
Okay, I appreciate that. And as an educator in the school system, I wonder if I could have budget, like paid extra money towards something so that coming out, I could have more. Is that possible?
So that is possible. It's not possible in the pension because that's fixed. You
Okay.
can't dictate how much you're going to put in.
Mm.
However, you can start another retirement account called a 403B plan.
Okay.
And The 403B plan is similar to a 401k plan. It is through your employer. A lot of them are pre-tax, meaning you don't pay any taxes on them. Tax on the contribution when you put it in, you pay tax when you take it out. So, and I'll go on a little further about that unless you have questions specifically on any other type of retirement plans. But the other retirement plans, a 403B retirement plan.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, go ahead and go further with it.
Okay, all right.
That's important.
Sounds good. So the 403B plan is voluntaries. That means that obviously you don't have to put money in. You can if you want to, but it's not mandatory. So like I mentioned to you before, your amount that you're putting into the pension plan can't be changed by you. And that's going to yield in a certain amount of money that you're going to get per month whenever you retire for the rest of your life. Now, if you haven't done planning, you don't know whether or not the date that you want to retire is going to yield a certain amount of money that's going to meet your needs. So you need to have some supplement. So that 403B retirement plan is often used as a supplement to kind of bridge the gap. So depending on how many years of service you have in, you may get, say, 70%, or you may get 80%, or whatever that number is. It's not 100% of what you were making the very last day. So with proper planning, you're actually able to kind of bridge that gap, we call it, to make up for what you're not receiving because you're leaving education. So that's the 403B plan. There's different ways to invest in the 403B plan as well, different investments. That's another good part of it as well, another important part to know. So it's not all just starting your 403B plan. You want to make sure that you actually know what you're invested in, because that's important as well. That's another part of my book that I talk about with retirement plans. But just to answer your question, yeah, the 403B plan is another way to invest money or to put extra money away. The other way is through, well, not through your employer, but you can start outside retirement accounts that you put money into that still can be used as a supplement. You may not be able to put as much as you can like you can into the 403B plan, but it's something outside your employer that you can actually contribute to while you're working for your school district.
Okay. Wow. So you mentioned, like, with proper planning, what does that look like? What is, like, an example of proper planning? Because I know that people want to know, like, well, where do I begin? How do I start? There's a lot to kind of take in.
Yep. So first you want to look at your expenses. So I always ask people, what are your expenses? And not only what are your expenses today, what are your expenses expected to be when you retire? Because you may have a house paid off, you may have your car paid off, you may have college paid off, just different things that may be paid off that you're, of course, if you stick to the plan and don't deviate, you'll have them paid off. There are oftentimes when people don't pay that stuff off. But the first question I'll ask is, what are those expenses? Then based on that, we take a look at what you're currently doing, what you're currently putting money into. Like I talked about, your pension plan, maybe your 403B retirement plan through your employer or other retirement accounts. So how much are you putting in? What's the strategy? How it's allocated as far as the investments go? And where is that projected to be? So then based on that, we know, okay, here's the projection, right? May not be guaranteed, but it's the projection. So is, Robin going to be 100% funded to where she needs to be when she wants to leave, when she wants to retire? Or is she 70% based on those investments to meet her expenses? And that's where we start. So therein lies the gap. So then I can come up with, what else do you have to do? How much more money do you have to put away? Maybe how do we have to change the investments, or what other investments do we have to start to make sure that you can meet, your needs? So it all starts with, the strategy of where you are today, where you want to go. Of course, you can drive from here to Virginia or North Carolina. You can use a map, or maybe you don't use a map, and maybe there's some signs up for you to get there, so you'll still get there, but maybe you won't get there as quickly and as efficiently as you could if you had a map. And that's what I'm referring to with the strategy as a map.
I love that. I really do. I love that, having the map. And even if you're at a space where you're like, oh gosh, I should have done this way earlier, it's not too late. start where you are.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why I love it, I say I am the queen educator, honey. And I know I'm the queen educator because I know I don't have all the answers, but I know people who have answers for all the different things
Yep.
that we face, and I think as educators, we just kind of go with the flow. But even if you're watching this and you're watching this on the replay and you're not sure like where to go and where to begin, think about what you already are doing. And so I love how you talk to us about like if like the assessment piece, like assess
Mhm.
where you are, assess what you have, assess where you want to go, and then start to think about, oh, do I need to do more? And as you start to take steps, as I start, I'll just keep it personal, local, and immediate. As I started to take steps, like, oh, okay, I always like say, oh, I don't know this stuff. And my mom, she's really, really good at like the budgeting, the finance and stuff. And I'm like, Mom, just come on, help me out. I'm gonna pay you, you be my financial person. But it really does pay, it really does pay in the long run for you to know, for me to know and understand what I'm working with instead of just having somebody do it. Now, I could have somebody do it, and I think that's fine, but being aware of where I'm at, and then I can say, okay, yay and nay and all that. But I think that when new teachers come, we just get so excited. I'll never forget, I was a new teacher. I was a substitute teacher at first, and I didn't have a bunch that I was making, right? So I was like, I don't really have anything to put away. But I think that even if you can start putting certain things away, you can start thinking about, okay, how long will I do the substitute teaching? Is it giving me what I need to put it, you know what I mean? If there's emergency, I think we don't always think about that as educators. We just don't. We just kind of like jump in there, got a job, we're excited, and yeah, they're gonna do something. They're gonna put my stuff, my money away. And I'll say this last thing because I want to ask you a question around it. One of the comments from our last call was like, educators make money and we really don't know what's happening with it, where it goes. We know it's going somewhere and we just let it keep going somewhere when it pulls out. And the teacher who was on, she said, I want to know more about what to do with my money whenever it just goes in there, making this. Should I be doing something different? Should I be pulling something out? Like, how do I know what to take, even though they're already taking stuff for me? Like, how do we help there?
Yeah. So one is like you said, first you want to know what you're putting money into. Also, you want to have a professional, and also, and like I said before, know what you're putting money into to determine how much you could put in. So you want to make sure, like I said earlier, that you just have that plan, you have that strategy, because there's a bunch of different places you could put money into. But like you just asked, how much do I put in? When do I take it out? There are certain rules around when you could take money out, or certain strategies to determine what pockets or what buckets of money that
Yeah.
you should take money out, because some investments, you pay taxes going in, you don't pay taxes coming out. Some investments you pay taxes going in or don't pay taxes going in and pay taxes coming out, or vice versa. Or some investments that you may have to pay taxes, period. So there's different buckets of money and different strategies that you should have when you are taking money out. So sometimes I'll have people that, they go to retire and they'll just start taking money from every bucket that they have possible, when it may be more advantageous for them to start taking out money that is going to be tax-free first and then pay the taxes later. So you allow that money to grow tax deferred for as long as possible until, the IRS says you have to start taking money out, so that way that can grow. So that's one strategy. And again, depending on what position you're in would determine how you should take your money, but you want to make sure that the tax implications as well. And that's something that a tax professional can help you with. I can always advise you, or kind of guide you to where you should take money out, but ultimately, as far as the tax part of it goes, a tax professional would be able to help you out with that as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's super helpful. I mean, you can go into depths more about because I know one of the things we wanted to discuss was around budgeting, right?
Yep.
Planning, generational planning. You talked a lot about planning, actually.
Yep.
What else would you think would be helpful for us now? Well, I won't, I'm saying us because I feel like I'm trying to catch up to some of the things I should have done while I was in this classroom. What are maybe like the top 3 tips today that you have for teachers who have not exited yet, but want to know more about what do I do with my money? And like top 3 things that are easy startups, maybe not easy, but doable.
Yeah. So one you mentioned was budget, right? So budgeting is important because if you are transitioning out of education to, or the public sector to private sector, your income may change. So I know, like you said, it's not easy. So when you're transitioning, now you're an entrepreneur. The money may not flow in the way that it was flowing in before from a standpoint of monthly check. It may take you a little bit of time to get to that place. So you want to start looking at if you were to take that step tomorrow, where would you have to be? How much, what would you have to pay off? How do you have to like kind of tighten your belt, so to speak, and stop spending in certain places, right? To make sure that you can retire or leave transition and still make ends meet. I think a lot of people that are transitioning don't do enough of that. Because like I said before, you were putting this money in to a pension plan where you had your employer and the state putting in for you. Now it's you. So you got to make up for all of that, right? The state and the employer. So budgeting is important. Uh, like I said before, planning, just proper planning, just looking at what you currently have, understanding what you have, reaching out to somebody that's a professional to help you understand what you have. You may have a bunch of different accounts, but if you don't know how they work, then they're just, accounts that could potentially be something. So like you had mentioned before, when you start working, you're so excited, you have so much information coming at you. It's kind of like drinking water through a fire hose, right? It's like a lot. You can't like really take it all in between your health benefits, your insurance, your retirement. So you just want to make sure that you have somebody to help you make sense of that. The last thing I'll say is just stay disciplined, right? Have your plan. Discipline is always key, no matter what you do, because if we can talk about these grandiose plans of budgeting and meeting your needs, expenses, and strategy and all that stuff, but if you don't start with the discipline yourself, all this isn't really going to matter, right? Because you're not going to go through with everything, and then we'll be in a worse position financially than you would have been if you would have stayed where you are, because the goal is to not go back, right? You transitioned out, you're like kind of cutting ties, you're moving on, but you got to remain disciplined, with every thing that we're talking about: strategy, budget, and so forth.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Budgeting, planning, and discipline.
Yep.
Powerful. And I think they're simple, but how often do we really do that in a way, like, I want to say religiously?
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, listen, like we know that our money makes the world go round, right? And so we want to be in a space where it's not about always being so rich. I mean, I've seen people who have so much money and they don't know what to do with it, and they don't know how to budget, or people who have very little and they're stewarding it well. And it actually helps give us peace of mind. And I know there were times whenever I was like starting out with this great budget and I'm like, okay, this is all this, and this is what's come. And there were things I would forget that were coming out of my account that I didn't even, but I'm like, okay, at least I have a budget of what, and I started to realize, okay, that's not okay. You started out with it and you have not looked at that, and are you really tracking your spending? And, if you're trying to leave legacy, how are you investing and all that? And there was time I just wasn't doing that. I just wasn't at the forefront. And I started to think like, okay, probably should be, because we're living in a world where times are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way in which we used to be as teachers, where teachers were teaching for 40 years and people still are doing that. But there are so many other options out there. And it's really good to know when you're transitioning to anything, or you never know what could happen. And so I appreciate you sharing those. Budgeting, discipline, the budgeting, planning, and discipline are the three things that I want to work towards for the rest of this year, this 2022, to where I have a system all the time. So I appreciate that. And in your book, I'll be looking at the tips and following those and doing my best to kind of stay disciplined with them. I want to ask you before we go
Yeah.
today, I want to ask you one thing, and then I want to offer to our audience to ask you any questions. When you're watching this on the replay, please put your questions. There's a survey that you can take. Last time we were here, people took a survey, and so we were responding to some of the questions that were asked at that time. So please feel free to do the same thing. But how did you get here? What, like, talk to us about your story. Like, I
Sure.
know you know, you're good. We know that. You're
Yeah.
good. Where did this come from? What's your story and your process to getting here in this past?
Yeah. Yeah, so good question. So actually, I think I've been asked that question probably like maybe 100 times. No, so yeah, for me to get here, I started off doing a senior project. So when I was in high school, that was the first year that we had to do a senior project. I've always been interested in money, kind of how it works. And I did my senior project in high school on stockbroking, being a stockbroker. So this was, you know, years and years and years and years and years ago. Interviewed a stockbroker, and he went through his whole process with me, and it was something I definitely was intrigued about. In addition to that, I started to get a little bit more involved by watching, just different TV stations that show the stock market, every single day. And of course, after doing that senior project, which I got a really good grade on, I was like, oh, okay, this is something that, I think I could do. And then from there, I went to college for business, then for economics, and got more ingrained in how the economy works, and how money, of course, finances were tied in, the stock market's tied in to the economy, economics. From there, when I graduated, I met with who previous branch manager at our firm. I interviewed during a career fair, and been here ever since I graduated college. So, it's something I love to do. This is one of the, professions that you have to love to work with people. One, ultimately, two, you have to know what you're talking about. Have to stay, kind of abreast of, what's happening, because this is a profession. It is something that people typically don't even think about. Like you said, you get your statements, throw them away, and people are coming to you for consultations, advice, how do I get from here to there? And it's important to, stay up on things, because, everything's constantly changed, no matter if you're in education or if you're in healthcare, if you're in finance, things are constantly changing. So, we have to keep up on that. But that was, I guess, a short synopsis of how I, got here, today. Yeah, looking, forward to the future chapters, but I love what I do.
Wow. So I'm so glad that you said your story. And it was a class that you took in school. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to tell you, when we're in school, when we're thinking about what we're teaching our students, it could be one thing that kind of like grabs your attention. But I love that it was, you said it was high school?
Correct. Yep.
And was it like an elective?
No, so it was it wasn't elective, so you had to do a senior project. So it was like,
Senior
I think,
project with,
yeah,
okay.
correct. Yeah, to graduate. I think I
Yeah.
was the only one that did my project on being a stockbroker.
Wow.
And yeah,
Like, where did
actually
that,
I'm positive.
how did you come up with, like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, I've always been interested in like money. But one thing that kind of prompted me to do that, to actually get into kind of the background of it, which actually a chapter in my book, I want to say it's like the first or second chapter.
Okay.
But it talks to I have bought a pair of shoes. I used to love, buying shoes, right? Everybody buys clothes, right? So I like shoes. So I bought a pair of shoes from a popular name brand company, and I wore the shoes for maybe a couple weeks, and then I think like the sole or something happened to the shoe that I had to take them back. And when I took them back, they wouldn't give me the same amount of money that I just paid for them. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was 2 weeks ago that I just, like, or it wasn't that long ago. The shoe shouldn't have, ripped or broke down like it did. And if it did, I should get my money back. And they didn't give me my money. So I said, well, there has to be a different way to kind of flip the script here. So kind of tied into that senior project, did some research on this particular company and said, like, well, if I put money in, buy this stock, right, then everybody else, there's a lot of different ways that the stock prices change, right? But I put the money in and then I could potentially buy more shoes than just this one pair and get a positive return instead of a negative return like I got, on those shoes that I bought. So that was my first experience with companies, how they work, consumerism, consumer mindset that we, are victim to every day, because that's just, it surrounds us every single day, right? So that's, one
That's
of the
so funny.
stories.
You literally have like the title of your book, Thinking Your Way to Wealth. You're like, hold on, problem solving, thinking, hold on, there has to be a different way. This is why I love talking to people about like what they do, because there's always like a childhood story, a background story, a class, a teacher, something,
Yeah.
and it's like brought you to where you are, whether it's a happy story, sad story, but it was like a story that kind of about your process. And so now you're in your mission of making sure that you understand and can support people, understand what's happening in the world and the changes. That's what I heard from you.
Yep.
But starting from young, and like when I think about everybody educate, I'm like, there's so many ways to educate our children. The difference between teaching like math and then teaching life lessons that connect with math is like education versus just teaching.
Yep.
You basically educated yourself, like you made it come alive. You literally,
Yeah, I was forced into it.
you were
Yeah, they didn't get me my money back for the pair of shoes I bought. So I was kind of like forced, like, wait a minute, yeah, I mean, I have to buy another pair of shoes for one, which of course I had several shoes. I had a lot of shoes back then, but still I have to buy another pair of shoes. But I started thinking, like, wait a minute, this is a major company, and I was already starting to get into the stock market, and I could just buy a share of that company and kind of make money while you're asleep.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And I think that if you guys want to know more, you should. That's dope to me. And I think when we kind of make it come alive for ourselves, even now as an adult, like, wait a minute, why do I feel like I'm not sure what's happening with the hard earned money that I'm making? Wait a minute, there's something wrong with that. And this is my life. And so I'm starting to realize, okay, we need to kind of really pause and think about those things, and then also make sure we're in the classroom and we are giving students real life connections, like when they hate math and they hate all, because many people tell me even to this day, and I was one of them, oh my gosh, math. But how does that translate into your life, into your future? And how can you actually problem solve, make a difference, or think your way to wealth using the math skills? And so, this is why I see connections in everything that we do here. But what questions do you all have for Orlando? How can he help you to get you and your family to transition into legacy building activities? Money is not just, something that is for a certain group of people. No, we absolutely can think our way to wealth. We can be very creative. We can problem solve, and we can plan, budget, and be disciplined so that when retirement does come, we are in a good space. And then our children can watch and see, like, oh my gosh, I know how to do this because my parents did that, right? And so we're also educating our children and our students, by the way, in which we care for ourselves when it comes to educating our wallet. And that's what we've been doing. And we will be back November 14th, 2022 for another session and time. So put your questions, your feedback that you have for us, and what would you like to hear? What would you like more of as an educator? And before we go, I want you to talk to us a little bit about, close out a little bit about your book, anything that you want to share that, you're in your mission, like it's very, very important from your book that people should get it and really take time and delve into, because that's what I want to know. Like, what area do you think, as an educator, I should really sit in?
Gotcha. Yeah. So my full title of my book is Thinking Your Way to Wealth, A Guide to Financial Independence. Available on Amazon. If you type it in, I'm sure it'll pop up, and should be my picture with it as well. As educators, everything that, or as people and educators specifically, everything I talk about in my book is relevant. But I think generational wealth is important. Like we talked about during last session, debt. There's a chapter in my book called Debt Easy to Get In, Hard to Get Out. Right, that's important. So I talk a lot about just different strategies, which in our next session or some future session, we could delve a little bit more into that as well, because obviously we all want to retire at some point, but you got to worry about today, right? How do you get out of that so you can retire? You don't have to continue working. The other one is consumer mindset. So that's an important one as well, because a lot of people, we're consumers, right? We buy things that don't appreciate with value or have the chance to appreciate with value. And how can you ever, really build wealth for yourself, if you're not intentional on, not being, I guess, don't want to call it a victim, but being a victim, air quotes, of the consumer mindset that that a lot of people have. So that's definitely important. My mission is to educate people, in the field of finance, to make people financially independent, right? So that way you don't have to continue to work for the rest of your life, or your family can benefit from something that you started yourself. So I would say that's my mission, in in life, as it relates to finance and helping people, no matter how old you are. And it's really never too late. I always tell people it's just a matter of when you want to start. Just be intentional and be disciplined, and if you do that and proper planning, things should work out for you.
Yes, thank you, Orlando. That is so awesome. I'm really excited. I love that I'm sharing my, like, because I'm learning as we're talking too, because I feel like when we had our sessions, I was like, okay, slow down, wait a minute, hold on. Wait. So as you're educating me and helping me kind of connect to where I'm at, I want to share that with everybody else, right? In Everybody Educate, so that teachers, and not just teachers, anybody else who listens as well, can be well. But get Orlando's book. I was trying to share my screen here to just show you guys what it looks like, and just look at the flyer again. So if you can see my screen, go ahead and get his book. I'm going to do a little bit of a study on that. That's one of my goals for this year, because I really want to be financially well, so that have peace of mind, like you said, for my like to leave legacy, generational wealth, the things that I'm starting in my business. And so just wanted to say thank you so much. I really need you guys to look out right on Amazon. Here we go. Okay. You can see Thinking Your Way to Wealth, A Guide to Financial Independence. Okay, Orlando or Houston. And these are the things that we have been talking about: the planning, generational wealth, budgeting, and even retirement. And so we will continue. And next week, if you'd like to show anything like a sample, we'd love to see maybe a sample, anything. I mean, I can even like get offline. I'll talk to you and maybe we can think about maybe what's something that is connected for our educators to be well. I just really am on a mission to make sure our educators are well, and financial is important as well.
Yep, me too.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You. See you next month. And then we'll go into December. Woo!
Okay.
And we'll end this year strong with a plan of action to be financially well. And okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, you're welcome.